So let me go start resume recording. Okay. All right. Welcome to the Journal-isms Roundtable, everybody. My name is Richard Prince, and I write an online column called Journal-isms. That's journal-isms, ISMS, on diversity issues in the news business. Started this roundtable in 1999 when a friend of ours was leaving to pursue a doctorate. She said, "Keep these going." And we have. We met every month in various restaurants in Washington, D.C. until the COVID pandemic when we switched to Zoom. Our participation multiplied, and we hope to have more roundtables that are hybrid, meeting in person, as well as having people attend via Zoom. We've had several of these, and if anybody wants to volunteer their space, has Zoom capabilities, please step forward. We'd love to be partners with you. We think of this as an online dinner party with the purpose to network and to learn. Some of the networking takes place in the chat room, so please feel free to make use of it. You can chat with people individually or with the whole group. A special welcome to those on Facebook who have arrived and saw the note about coming here to Zoom. Please leave messages in the comments section if you want to reach us on Facebook, but you can also use the chat room. All comments are on the record, and we ask everybody to be respectful of other people's time. So please be succinct and to the point. We have quite a program tonight, so we want to get on this as soon as possible. We'll be here for 2 hours, and the first thing on our agenda is our Barry Bingham Senior Award, Fellowship Award. We have the recipient with us. We want to raise a toast to Dr. Mia Moody. Now, this is very special for journalism because this award it used to be it started in 1990 and it was administered by the National Conference of Editorial Writers, which became the Association of Opinion Journalists, which merged into the News Leaders Association, which then dissolved last year. So we are now the stewards of that. We're very happy to do that. And we're very proud of our first recipient, who is Dr. Mia Moody of Baylor University. And has been in that department there in Baylor, at Baylor, and is the incoming president of AEJMC, which is what the Association of, I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll let her explain what that is. But anyway, we want to raise a toast to our recipient for this award, which honors somebody who has done a singularly excellent job at promoting diversity among journalism students who will be in the pipeline for our profession. So let's raise a toast to Dr. Mia Moody, and then we'll hear from her. Congratulations. Hear, hear.
Yay.
Hey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. So
Okay.
excited to be here today and see so many familiar faces, Dorothy Bland, Linda Shockley, Neil Foote, individuals that I know from AEJMC. So it's good to see those faces, and I do have a few words to share with you all.
Please go right ahead.
Yes, so um, when I first began teaching journalism, I took on diversity as a cause because as a former newspaper reporter, I noticed gaps in coverage and how outlets framed people of color using cultural narratives and stereotypes. And
Mm.
anyone who has worked with me, such as Dorothy Bland and others who have written scholarly papers with me, those are the topics that I usually focus on. And as a cub reporter at the Waco Tribune Herald newspaper, where I worked for 6 years, and that's how I ended up in Waco, and I'm still here, I began to see how this mattered, how diversity made a difference. And at that time, I believe that diversity should be a goal. However, today I know that diversity is a necessity because our stories shape society. And if those stories don't reflect the richness of our communities of color, we fail our mission as truth tellers. Receiving the Barry Bingham Senior Fellowship Award is an incredible honor. I am deeply humbled to receive this award, which recognizes educators who advance diversity in journalism. Diversity should not just be a concept, it should be a commitment to ensuring that every voice is heard and every story is told with fairness and respect. I want to thank Journal-isms and Richard Prince for taking stewardship of this award and continuing its legacy. I also thank my colleagues, students, and mentors at Baylor University and across the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication, or AEJMC, for their support throughout my career journey. Together, we've worked to create spaces where underrepresented voices can thrive and where future journalists understand the power and responsibility that they hold. This recognition is not just for me, it is for all of us who believe in equity, inclusion, and truth in media. Let's keep pushing forward to make our newsrooms and classrooms reflect the rich diversity of the communities we serve. Thank you again for this incredible honor.
All right, thank you. Now I have a question. What's
Yes.
it like to feel this way and do the things you're doing in Texas,
In
which is
Texas.
one of the first states to go on this anti-DEI bandwagon? So
Mm-hmm.
what's that like?
I have to say that it is scary because I am blessed to work at a private university that is not touched as much by some of these rulings, but I do have friends who work at state universities, University of Texas, Dorothy Bland at North Texas. And so just in talking with them and having them share their stories, have how different departments have been eliminated, how positions have been eliminated, it deeply concerns me. And at Baylor, it's not like we don't have anything to worry about. We are cautioned and we are told that we should not make ourselves a target. So we have colleagues there who are also concerned, particularly if they are not tenured, and they research diversity related topics. So I was the chair of my department for 6 years, and I just finished up my tenure as chair. But that last year, I had colleagues come to me from various universities and Baylor University and ask me, what does this mean for me? Should I continue to research this topic or should I switch? Can I get tenure if I do research on DEI? So that was a whole new area that I had to speak to as the chair of a department and also as the incoming president of AEJMC. So I just say that these are scary times and we're still kind of feeling our way around. Um, but I am working with individuals who are continuing to fight a good fight for diversity.
Here, here. All right, we have time for maybe one question from anybody who has a question for Dr. Moody.
I also want to acknowledge Bill Sellis. I see that he's on.
Yay, Bill.
Hi,
Oh yeah,
Bill.
our judges are also with us. And
Yes,
Bill is a
and yes, I see so many familiar faces. I don't want to start calling out names because I will forget somebody, but I do want to acknowledge him. He actually encouraged me to apply for the award, so thank you for
Yay.
Mia,
Here, here.
I had followed Mia's work for many, many years when I was on the faculty at USC. And I'm from Texas. And I know even in the best of times, diversity hasn't always been an easy initiative to launch at public or private institutions. So I had followed Mia's work on Facebook and was really quite impressed that in an environment like we find ourselves in Texas, that Dr. Moody was able to do so much.
Here, here. Now, Bill, I should also point out, is a previous winner of that award, so he knows from which he speaks.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And I would like
Okay.
to I would like to speak to what Bill said, and that is true. It has always been a concern. When I first started on the tenure track, I was told that, I might reconsider my research
Yeah.
topic because
Mm.
it would be very difficult to have articles published in journals. And it was in the beginning, I received so many rejection letters for those journal articles.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I added social media to my journal article submissions or to my theories that I began to receive some acceptance letters. So yes, I was discouraged at first I was told that I probably should look into doing research on other topics rather than gender and race.
All right. All right. One last question from E.R. Ship, who's got her hand raised.
Why did social media make a difference?
Social media made a difference. So that was about 20 years ago. That was when it first came out. And so I was one of the first scholars to look at social media within the context of gender, race, and media. And so just by adding social media and building on previous concepts and previous theories, that added interest to my research topics. And people, journals appreciated that new adding that new context to research that was already out there. Prior to that, research had primarily focused on newspaper articles, television shows, books, traditional media. And so just looking at social media, that was of interest to our academia.
Okay, one really last question from Wanda Lloyd.
And how Wanda has spoken to my class several times.
Yeah, I
It's
have.
so good to see you.
I just wanted to say how proud I am of you, Mia. We met
Aw.
in, I think it was 2014 at Louisiana
Mhm.
State in a program to help train up and coming scholars for leadership roles. And
Yes.
I was chair of a department. You became chair of a department. You've done
Mhm.
so much. I just want to say how proud we are of you. You're my sorority sister as well.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
But we stay in touch, and I'm just very proud of you. So
Thank you,
keep the
Wanda.
faith going.
All right,
Thank
here,
you.
here.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yes, yes. All right. You go. Anybody who wants to continue the conversation can do so in the chat room. So,
Hmm.
so
Sure.
please,
I'll check the chat notes.
please
I'll
feel
start
free to
looking
do.
at the questions in chat.
All right.
Thank you
Excellent.
all.
All right. And thank you. Congratulations. Now, oh, by the way, your award will be coming shortly. The physical award will be coming shortly. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Now, is Brother Marc Morial here and Tara Murray? Are they in the house? Maybe we'll have to wait for them then. Okay.
I think Mark
Uh,
is.
what's that?
I think Mark is in the house.
Where is okay?
I think we're
Mark,
both
I don't see you.
here.
Mr. Prince. I see Marcus coming off of mute.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. Great. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hugo. Okay, very good. Very good. Well, we eager to hear from both of you. And let me just let's set this up here. Mark and Tara are, of course, with the National Urban League. And earlier in the year, at the beginning of the year, they were part of a group called that they started called the Demand Diversity Coalition, which was created to fight this anti-diversity climate we're in. And they said they would do so by any means necessary. And they gathered a group of people to do this. Then later on, they went up to the Hill and talked with Hakeem Jeffries about what strategies they should use. And along the way, they had a meeting in Washington in which I asked them, well, "What about the journalists? Should they be part of this?" Mark said, "Well, we've been working on trying to get the National Association of Black Journalists and the National Newspaper Publishers Association aboard." So I want to start them off by saying, "Well, what's the status of that?
Yeah.
And what can we expect? And what do you want? What would you like us to do?"
Let me first of all, can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
I want to just say thank you for inviting Tara and I to this conversation tonight. And I want to absolutely compliment the fact that you all are leaning in on this issue and using the power of the pen and the power of your voice in this very, very challenging time. We said earlier in the year that we're in a state of emergency.
Emergency.
The attacks on democracy, the attacks on diversity, and a myriad of economic policies. And we've stood up this Demand Diversity Roundtable, and we are inviting NABJ and NPA and a number of other journalism organizations to join us in January. I'll let Tara talk a bit about it for our second Demand Diversity Roundtable at the National Press Club. We need the journalists. We are going to build this table of a coalition of the committed and the willing who want to push back against this assault. Now, I'll tell you how I see it. I see it as a full-scale assault on civil rights, a full-scale assault on the last 70 years of progress that we made as a country since Brown versus Board. And the assault, which has manifested itself in attacks on diversity at law firms, in the media, in corporations, in universities, must be resisted with everything and all that we have, because it fundamentally is an effort to undermine a very significant component of the American value system. Since then, we, along with others, have brought lawsuits. Since then, we, along with others, have agitated online, at events, and in many places. Since then, we have been involved in numerous private conversations with business leaders, C-suite executives, urging them to push back and to show some courage in the face of these very significant attacks. And it's been a difficult and tough year, but we're pleased to say that based on recent polling, Tara will talk about this a little more in detail, the favorability amongst the American people for diversity, equity, and inclusion, for equal opportunity is higher than it was a year ago. And in the court of public opinion are backfiring, even as we listen to the loud noise. We've got to leverage the court of public opinion to send a strong message to not walk away from their commitments. This year alone, the Black unemployment rate has increased by almost 2%. The African-American women who have been laid off in record numbers, you have read about that, you have written about that, that is indeed a fact. So already we're feeling the damage. Many corporations have walked away. Some have held firm. Many who've held firm have not been vocal about it. Many who walked away have done it under the mistaken assumption that it's going to get them out of the hairs of the administration and its regulators. So we need you. We want you as a part of this roundtable. This roundtable is multi-racial. We have African Americans, Latinos, Asians. We have progressive organizations and pro-democracy organizations. By design, we're of the impression that we've got to fight together to reaffirm the commitment and to push back against what is happening. So let me go to my colleague, Tara Murray. Tara is the executive director of the National Urban League's Washington Bureau, to add to what I've just shared with you. Tara?
Thank you, Marc. And I'll just echo a couple of things that Marc shared. First, thank you for inviting us. And thank you for the amazing work that you all are doing to amplify this issue, because that's what we need now. I want to speak a little bit about the new research that Marc just highlighted. And that research is showing us that the public has not rejected diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the Rabin Group, in collaboration with Hart Research, Bellwether Research, and Next Level DEI, conducted a nationally representative online survey of more than 3,000 registered voters. And that research took place, and that polling took place from June 16th through 21st of this year. And the goal of that was to better understand voter perspectives on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to inform more effective communication strategies for organizations like the National Urban League and for the Demand Diversity Roundtable that we convene. And the research was uniquely bipartisan, jointly executed by the right of center Bellwether Research and the left of center Hart Research. And the findings are clear. The support for DEI remains very strong. It is actually stronger than it was last year when the same group conducted this research. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is viewed positively by 72% of voters. That's across the board. That's, voters that identify as Democrats, as Republicans, as independents. That's Black, white, that's gender, that's age. 72% of voters believe in the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And even the acronym DEI, this was really surprising to us, that even the acronym DEI is carrying a plus 26 net positive rating. And so what that is telling us is that the data is really suggesting that the MAGA aligned attacks on DEI are backfiring, as Marc said, and pushing many voters towards supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion as expressions of fairness, opportunity, and truth. And so the top message that I want to share that we're receiving from this data across every demographic is that telling the truth about America, its history, its accomplishments, and its challenges, and not erasing it is what people want to see. And that is the message that is resonating across the board. And for corporate audiences, what we're hearing, the top message being is that customers are diverse, and so the teams need to reflect the diversity of the customers that are being served. And so this is really promising data. We plan on building on this data with our reconvening of the Demand Diversity Roundtable, which, as Marc mentioned, was first launched, and as Richard, you mentioned as well, was first launched earlier this year in January, just 2 days after the inauguration of Donald Trump. But we're going to come back again to the National Press Club on January 22nd of 2026 of this year with an expanded table to include the media associations that Marc mentioned, to include the state attorneys general that we've been working very closely with this year as well, to really talk about what the coordinated legal policy and communications response needs to be in 2026 and beyond.
All right. All right. Anybody got any? This is what do you attribute this change to? I mean, all this assault everywhere you go, and now you say that it's backfiring. Why? How did that happen?
I'm gonna I just tell you this. I think that it tracks the public's rejection of the Trump agenda. The Trump economic agenda is polling in the 30s. The Trump approval ratings are in the 30s. The public is rejecting this harsh, if you will, nasty, castigating, racial rhetoric. They are rejecting it. And what we have to be careful of is believing that the loudest voices are carrying public opinion. No, what this is showing is that the proverbial silent majority is rejecting what we see. We have to continue to push back. We have to continue to articulate positive voices. We have to do it in public. We have to do it in private. I am part of a group at my alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania, where 10 Black alumni have gone in to see for a face-to-face meeting with the president of the university. We'll soon be meeting with the chair of the board and members of the trustee board. We're running an inside play to push on them, to prevail on them, not to yield to some of the demands being made of the university. We have to have an inside and outside strategy. So groups like NABJ and other trade groups can and should, I think, meet with media organizations, should meet with broadcasters and newspapers and state what our position is, and state how we feel, and state how damaging these attacks are. I feel it's important. What I learned in the University of Pennsylvania context is all the wealthy donors are going to see the president.
I'm on the Journal-isms call.
And I just put that in context in terms of how we need to fight in this moment, both inside and outside, where we have agency and where we have standing.
Okay. Anybody got any questions? We've got just a few minutes to with these folks.
Can I
Well,
share
here,
a key finding from the research? And it goes back to something that you shared about the work that we've been doing this year to engage with Democrats on this issue and call on them and urge them for congressional leadership to actively push back on the anti-DEI narratives and the legislative threats. One of the key findings of the research, and I dropped the link in the chat, and I'm doing that again now. But one of the key findings is that the reason for DEI's increased positive image is that Democrats have moved from a mildly positive to a strongly positive position in the past year. And so they've been more vocal about it. And I think that's important.
well, let me just ask this question then, and we're going to have our panelists weigh in as well. It's fine that the public is shifting this way, but this is an issue of power. And when the anti-DEI people control the FCC, they control the approval of mergers of these media companies and other powerful have other powerful roles in determining the future of the media companies, which are suffering in other ways. I don't see how public opinion uh, can match the power that they have to say yes or no to the future of these companies' bottom lines. What do you say to that?
Mark, you're on mute.
Okay.
Right. That where you have those companies that have a regulatory approval needed, then public opinion is not going to impact those companies, particularly these media companies that are seeking FCC or DOJ approval for a transaction. But
Right.
there's a legion of companies that are not in that position. Let me give you for example. We all understand and we watch what's happened with Target, right?
Mm-hmm.
It had no deal pending. Target had no transaction pending. Target had no regulatory threat against them. They just got nervous and blinked, and they've paid the consequences. We have to send a message to these companies that we are consumers, and that as consumers, we may be inclined to walk away from them if they retrench. Our power is in that. That's a hard thing to organize, but everybody, the media companies are, but everybody doesn't have a deal pin, right? Everyone is not subject to that type of pressure. The other way the court of public opinion impacts is we have to impact the investor community, the people, the institutional investors who get on these earnings calls with these companies, and where this sometimes is a subject of some discussion. So this is not, public opinion is just one tool that may be able to be used in some instances, but I think you're absolutely right because it is a game of power. The second thing I will say, for better or for worse, we have to begin in January with the long and difficult process of maximizing the mobilization of our community as voters. The 26 elections, a lot will be on the line. We have to shape public opinion. We have to give courage to some of these weak-kneed politicians who want to, pretend that they can't stand up for DE&I because they're going to get a backlash amongst voters. We have to show them that that premise is absolutely wrong. And we will send a message if they don't stand up for the things that are important to us. So there are a lot of fronts that we've got to battle on. But having public opinion on our side is not a perfect strategy. It's not a complete strategy, but it is something we have to figure out how to best use.
Okay, your ship had her hand up.
Why haven't we seen any reporting on this survey? I feel like I've missed something.
We're just starting with we just got a green light literally a day or two ago to share this publicly. Right, Tara?
Yep.
This basically been private. We want you all to write about it. We can share it with you all. We don't own the research. The research was shared with us by allies and partners, and we just got an okay to pretty much share it with people, share it with the media and the like. And we do need, and we're developing a more comprehensive strategy. We understand, Tara, correct me if I'm not wrong, that the surveyors may be available for interviews as well, the people that actually did the poll. So we're in the early part of trying to socialize this much greater.
Okay. All right. I'd like to get some reaction, but from our main panelists. I see Errin Haines is here, president of NABJ. Errin, do you want to respond to what Marc Morial has said?
Yeah,
Tara?
happy to. Hi, Mark. Hi, Tara. Good to
Hey.
see both of you. Mark is somebody that I have been in conversation with even before. I took office in August as NABJ president, but and somebody that I've covered for years. Having covered race for the better part of the last 2 decades. But look, we are in agreement. This is absolutely a moment that requires courage. And these are groups that know how to advocate, right? But so does NABJ. And we know that when NABJ leads, others in our industry follow. And the reality is, just like Mark said, if Black America is under attack, we are compelled to respond in this moment. And so NABJ is absolutely in that fight. I'm saving the date for January 22nd in Washington, planning to be there in solidarity with you all because, look, the same forces that are coming for our newsrooms are coming for our communities. They're attacking diversity, they're suppressing the truth, they're rolling back the freedoms that our profession frankly depends on. And so to me, it was pretty obvious. It makes sense. It's necessary for NABJ to really be standing shoulder to shoulder, right, with civil rights organizations right now. We know that we're stronger in coalition. There's strength in numbers. And when we show up together, we remind the country that press freedom and civil rights are not separate fights. They're the same fight. And so I believe that us being a coalition only amplifies our mission, and it ensures that we are not just telling the story as Black journalists, but we are shaping what happens. So,
NABJ will be there in January then?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. What about the Guild? Let's hear from Jon Scheuss. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
You did it right the first time. Yeah, Scheuss. It kind of rhymes with voice or choice. And I've lost my voice practically today because I was out in Pittsburgh and we just ended our strike at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette after 1,133 days on strike.
Yes.
Long time. I agree. I think one of the things that we do, and I see Mary here from SAG-AFTRA, from a union standpoint, we actually have so much power to organize collectively and then bargain for diversity, equity, and inclusion provisions at the bargaining table and put them into a contract that's enforced. So Mary and I probably,
Uh-oh. I don't know what's happening.
I think he's frozen.
Okay, so what do we do about that?
We lost him. Maybe Mary
He'll come back, I'm sure.
Sir, if you could just, for the sake of the National Urban League members, share who Jon is and his guild.
I'm sorry. The News Guild is the primary union for people who work at newspapers and other related media companies, media operations. We're going to hear also from Mary Cavallaro, who is with the SAG-AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio. I forgot what the A
Artists.
Artists. Thank you. And that's the broadcast side. So, while we're waiting for Jon to come back, let's hear from Mary then from SAG.
Thank you, Richard. And it's a privilege to be here again with you all. And thank you for the invitation. And it's so wonderful to see so many familiar faces and names as well. Just following up on what Jon says, I'm thrilled to be able to say what I'm seeing is positive in terms of the union negotiating language on this subject in our contracts. I can tell you that there has been some pushback, some concern in this area since the 2023 Supreme Court decisions as to how that works and how it's implemented. And
wait, what was this the Supreme Court decision?
So the decisions related to Harvard University and the University of North Carolina that ultimately people thought was just about education, but I can tell you the reaction has reverberated around the employment community in general as to how people implement DEI in the workplace. And so there's a little bit of concern, but in the union environment, what we've seen in terms of positive development has been this collective approach. And I just want to, Jon and I work together all the time in this area and other areas to support journalists. What we see in the workplace of the rank and file members working together to make sure that their workplaces are diverse, that those principles are lived instead of just being in language somewhere. We see our member leaders really protecting their colleagues, looking out for their colleagues. I get phone calls from people saying, Mary, I'm worried about this person. Can you really look into their situation and see if they were denied a promotion for the wrong reasons, illegal reasons? So the good news is I just want to share with this group that the people working as journalists in all areas, both on in front of the camera, behind a microphone, behind the scenes, are really, they care. They want to make sure that their union contracts are enforced, but also that the principles of DEI and B are enforced and lived as a culture, as opposed to just performatively, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you. Now we also have Martin Reynolds is here, for co-executive director of the Robert C. Maynard Institute for Journalism, and they represent the pipeline into journalism by training folks and also training them once they're actually on the job, and sensitize them and train them into promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, Martin, what's your reaction to what you've heard?
Well, good to be here. Good to see so many familiar and friendly faces across the landscape. So thank you, Richard, for hosting this conversation. It's interesting, in between 2020 and 2022, we couldn't keep up with the demand of in newsroom diversity training. There was obviously this huge swell, and it was for folks wanting to address these issues. And we saw the decline begin to happen in retrenchment in 2023. And it just accelerated into 2024. And so in going into, and this was fee for service, just to give you a sense, we did probably more than $1.2 million in fee for service revenue related to this kind of training, focusing on the fault lines and how we all see the world through these lenses of race and class and gender and generation and geography and other elements of identity, and how you align across these fault lines shape perception, shapes coverage, business practice, and the like. So we teach that framework. And in going into 2025, just to give you a sense of scale, we budgeted $0. So that is how precipitous the decline for this work, what it resulted in. And I think this level of capitulation that we have seen on the part of many media companies is obviously incredibly distressing and upsetting. And I think it's given, that being said, the pipeline for our graduates, people in these news organizations living through these shifts and change. Many are managers and leaders, executive leaders, storytellers. They are navigating incredibly hostile environments, places that continue to be toxic, continue to be upsetting, continue to be very difficult. And the kind of coverage that folks want to do, particularly in these mainstream traditional news organizations, is also being affected by the climate that we're in. And so it's given us some thought to, well, the Institute was founded to really integrate many of the mainstream news organizations that many of us worked for many years to find ourselves in, some of the stalwarts of newspaper companies in particular. And it certainly has gotten us questioning, why should we be encouraging folks of color to be aspiring to these institutions? Should the focus now shift, being that the moment that we need backbone and people to support this in the moment, and there's a turning away, there is a growing nonprofit and entrepreneurial space being supported by organizations like INN and Lion and the Pivot Fund and Borealis Philanthropy, independent folks who need support and revenue. And should we be directing journalism professionals of talent and skill in the next generation into those spaces rather than into the places and spaces that continue to cause harm, and particularly at the leadership levels where there is a lack of diversity and has been so for decades. These problems to meet parity and all of this has been happening for decades. You know that better than others, Richard. So it's been a very challenging time, and I'll close with this piece. The one thing that I think became clear, though, is that in this moment, there is no capitulation. There cannot be a stepping back. The audiences, the voices represent the voices of the future, the markets of the future, the innovation and growth, and we will lean into that and embrace that as an organization.
Okay. Now we have our people identified as people, all the people in the room. Larry Goldbetter of the National Writers Union, Carolyn Hendrie of SPJ, Society of Professional Journalists, David Honig of MMTC, which does broadcast ownership. Diana Fuentes is here from IRE, Investigative Reporters and Editors. Tracy Powell, of the Pivot Fund. Kat Stafford of Reuters, Global Race and Justice Editor. Now, the question on the table is, how has Trump affected newsroom diversity, but also what can we do about that? So I'd like to ask any of those people who want to weigh in on what can we do about it, and what is the situation right now that we need to be aware of. So any of those folks want to speak up now on that?
Well, Richard, from IRE's perspective, if I may, my jumping the gun here. Well, I mean, part of this is I hear it. Obviously, there's this terrible thing going on where they're trying to make us disappear, and we refuse to go. That's all there is to it. And so, what's actually happened to us at IRE, Francisco Barahorta is our Director of Diversity and Inclusion, and we find that a lot of people still want the training because they still need to cover the communities that are out there in their own backyards. And so we actually have seen an increase in people who are asking for diversity training because they're not getting it anywhere else. And so we're ready to serve, and we do. Our membership, despite all these layoffs have been decimating newsrooms right and left, has maintained at about 30% journalists of color. So they still want the training. People are still out there and are maintaining. So that is, to us, encouraging, but they need the support. And so I think what we need to do about it is exactly what everyone so far has been saying, which is we don't give up and we fight. We fight the good fight, and we got to give it. We cannot let them pretend that we're not there, or they're using words against us, and words are our weapons. So in our part of it is we continue the fight. We continue to work with each other. Collaborations is key. Working with each other. I look forward to the summit in January. We would like to participate in that.
Yay.
Yes, absolutely. Give us more details. Let me know. Let's see what we can do, please. But that's part of it is we have continued. We work for the University of Missouri. We are employees. We are technically, we are an affiliate of them. And so the words are there, but we have support of our leadership who understands that when you're talking about journalism and telling the truth and holding power to account, that includes this. That includes the issue of diversity, and that our country is a melting pot. It still is. You can't pretend that it's not. I mean, Trump saying something doesn't make it so. And we've just got to keep going.
All right. Jon, you've got your hand up from the Guild.
Yeah, I switched to my phone as a hotspot, so hopefully that's better than crappy
good.
Comcast here. Yeah, so just to kind of add into what other people have said, one of the things that we're doing is fighting for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the collective bargaining agreements that we're reaching at every single table, right? Because every single private sector worker in the United States of America has the right to form a union. And then it's up to you as workers to be able to develop what you want in your contracts. So for us at the Guild, we've had more than 8,000 journalists and media workers unionize with us in the last 8 years. That's 1,000 journalists and media workers every single year organizing with us from more than 150 newsrooms in that 8 years. And when journalists are organizing, whether it's at the Dallas Morning News or it's at the Los Angeles Times or it's wherever, a lot of them are putting in their mission statements that they want diverse newsrooms. They want newsrooms that look like the communities that we cover, because frankly, that's an ethical obligation for us as journalists. If we're going to be accountable, that means we have to be accountable and we have to look like the communities we cover. And so we can do things in contracts, in bargaining, like fight for pay equity, fight for a mandate that a certain percentage of people who are interviewed come from underrepresented groups, fight for, in our contracts, the requirement that every single publication has to release a diversity study showing what the diversity is for the newsroom and making that public on our websites. So we can do a lot at the bargaining table to increase diversity, to fight for equal pay, and to provide for promotion so that there is management that is diverse, which is a big problem, as folks have said. So I think one of the best ways that we can fight for DEI is at the bargaining table. And that's why every single person on this call should be supporting journalists unionizing, whether you're unionizing with SAG-AFTRA, whether you're unionizing with the Writers Guild of America East, whether you're a freelancer and you're working with the National Writers Union, or you're representing different folks, journalists like us at the News Guild. We represent folks at the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post. So just organizing is like one of the most effective things that we can do to fight for diversity, equity, inclusion in newsrooms.
All right. Tracy Powell's got her hand up, and then I'll go back to ER. Shit. Tracy.
Thank you, Richard.
Tell us what the Pivot Fund is first.
Sure, I can do that. First, I want to say +1 to everything Diana and Martin said earlier. The Pivot Fund is a national fund that invests in hyperlocal community news and information. We moved about $5 million in the past 3 years to news outlets that serve communities that are historically marginalized and underserved in both urban and rural communities. And so I want to start there because one of the things that Martin talked about is investments into entrepreneurship and ownership. As Marc Morial often says, ownership matters. And so the Pivot Fund invests in those hyperlocal news outlets that are owned and serving communities of color. We've been doing this. I'm also the founding fund manager for the Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, which I helped launch in 2019. And just as Martin said, there was a boatloads of money coming to the Racial Equity and Journalism Fund in 2020. That is, I can say it's almost dried up. We were working very, very hard to raise dollars. I know that Pivot Fund is focusing outside of traditional journalism philanthropy. We appreciate our donors in traditional journalism philanthropy, but we have to identify new funding streams because, it's not talked about that loudly. A lot of funders in the journalism space have kind of drawn down or the dollars that they put toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. It just isn't there anymore. Those dollars are going elsewhere. Even when they were putting dollars toward diversity and equity and inclusion, a lot of those dollars were going to largely white-led organizations that were, quite frankly, launching initiatives at the time when it was in vogue, launching initiatives that serve communities of color. Those initiatives are also going away, by the way. And so, what I've seen in philanthropy is funders asking grantee partners to change the language that they use to remove diversity and equity and inclusion from the grant proposal. I've seen, and I posted a link in the chat. We had a webinar a few months ago, where we had publishers come on and talk about how, they had a $250,000 advertising campaign go away overnight because of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives were being eliminated. That happened in Minneapolis. It happened in West Virginia. Not only was it state funding in West Virginia, it was funding from some nonprofit organizations that was eliminated because of the anti-DEI sentiment. So we're seeing this across the country when these independent publishers are being hit hardest. I support 100% us working on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in traditional newsrooms, including newspapers. I think people of color and communities of color need to be represented in those newsrooms. But to Martin's point, should we continue to focus on those newsrooms to the exclusion of independently owned outlets when we know that we are putting people in harm's way in a lot of the newsrooms? They're working in hostile environments. But because, we're now saying independent journalism, hyperlocal news is the way forward for the industry, we need to also turn our attention to that sector and make sure that owners and publishers are being supported in much the same way white-led organizations are being supported, and so that their organizations and the service that they provide for their communities is sustainable.
Thank you. Okay, we have Ship and then we have Hazel, but I wonder if David Honig is here. David, are you there? Okay, we don't see David. All right, Ship and then Hazel.
I think I almost know the answer to this, but I was knocked out of the room for a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, it felt like. And I missed what Martin was saying, that we should not spend all of our energy focusing on these mainstream news organizations. But I think I've gathered the train of the discussion that we should be looking at independent entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera. Do I have that right?
Martin, you still here?
Yeah, I would say that absolutely, and not solely, but yes, considerably, much more increasingly. I mean, there's efforts. For instance, we just completed a 6-month program with some small publishers in the Midwest with budgets under $300,000, and it's sort of founder-led entrepreneurs, people in the community, and they are so close to the community, deeply trusted, and doing journalism at a granular level that newspapers at one time did do. And so, and I'll just say this piece, as efforts are underway simultaneously to support policy, public policy to support local news, that's also an opportunity. But there are folks who are sort of leading this charge who are not centering, so folks like, such for instance, Rebuild Local News, which has some great templates, but doesn't necessarily center equity and inclusion at the center of policy, with an effort to focus more on getting a win. And while maybe from a pragmatic perspective, that's understandable, but what that ends up doing, if we're not being intentional about being inclusive of what are the kinds of policies that are going to reach independent, BIPOC-led and BIPOC-serving outlets. And if we're not being, or entrepreneurs, and if we're not being intentional about that as policy is being developed, then we're going to replicate the very disparities that philanthropy has often done with less giving to BIPOC-led and BIPOC-serving outlets. So there's an opportunity now in this moment, and that's one solution that we can focus on, which is local policy to support local news and making sure it is inclusive and reflective of communities.
Now,
One brief thing that gives us something to think about as educators of young journalists, a number of whom I have on the call tonight, as to where they should be thinking about their futures in the business.
Yeah, the challenge is salary and money and sustainability, right? That's often why we send folks to these other outlets. They still have larger budgets and often more resource. So I want to recognize it's a bit of a rub, but as we look ahead, how can we resource independent and entrepreneurs of color so that they can
please explain BIPOC to those who don't know what BIPOC is.
Black, Indigenous, people of color.
Martin, can I add one thing to what you said just now?
Mm-hmm.
The larger the larger newsrooms, yes, they have bigger operating budgets, but we also want to talk about markets that are in market failure, businesses that are in market failure. And I don't think I'm not being disingenuous here. The major legacy newsrooms are in market failure. Where you see growth opportunities are among the hyperlocal independent newsrooms. That's where the growth sector is.
Okay. Hazel, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I am. First, I just want to say that I'm so excited about January 22nd. That's the most exciting thing that I've heard in a long time, and I just can't wait to get there to the National Press Club. And okay, I think I'm just kind of thinking out loud when I put this question out there. It's probably more of a thought. I'm just wondering how many Black people or people in general, reporters in general, in newsrooms are self-censoring because of fear of getting fired or something happening to them because of their positions on certain issues. For example, Karen Ataya at the Washington Post said she was fired because of some position that she took pertaining to political violence. And so, I mean, I don't think anybody would admit or confess to that, but I'm just wondering how many people are actually self-censoring, and has that question been asked in any kind of poll or research?
Okay.
Well, and what are we missing?
Hazel,
they're not saying.
Hazel, can I answer that real quick? Or Richard, may I answer that real quickly?
Yeah, let me just ask Hazel to tell us what she does for a living here before we go to the next question.
Oh, I'm Hazel Trisedney Newswire. And what I do is I put out opinion pieces on my Newswire, as well as e-blast opinion pieces and news stories pertaining to Black America, any and everything pertaining to Black America, including this.
Okay. All right. Now, Tracy, you wanted to.
Hazel, I'm a huge fan. Real quickly,
thank you,
Hazel. That's an excellent question, and it is happening every day. We have not just in terms of publication, but also when folks are filling out grant applications, they're having to censor and be careful about what they say. We just recently had a webinar about careful language now that we have to use in grant applications, what we can and cannot say that might get us into trouble. You know, we've had a big push in this industry for news outlets to apply for nonprofit status. I don't know if that was such a smart idea. So they've been girding up for what comes next when we start snatching 501c3s from nonprofit newsrooms. And lastly, especially among immigrant media, what we're seeing is that those publishers are going underground. They're publishing content, but it's in closed text messaging groups. They're not going to put it on their website. They're not going to put it out on Facebook group or other social media channels. They have gone underground. So that's happening quite a bit right now. And it's all because they have been intimidated, harassed, attacked, or threatened. And I hope that, Richard, we can talk a little bit about that, kind of the backlash, the attacks that have happened against journalists because of these policy crackdowns.
Well, that's a good segue for Carolyn Hendrie of the Society for Professional Journalists to talk about. So, Carolyn, tell us about SPJ's role in all that we've been talking about.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to be invited. And I want you to know I'm really here to learn. And I'm thrilled that you asked me to say a few words. That's delightful. What really resonates with me is this issue of how can we work together to fight the fear. I just hear everything that was just recently said about how press freedom, diversity, equity, and inclusion, they are all one and the same in so many ways. We have to fight the fear. We need to stick together and stick up for ourselves. SPJ, as you know, has a long proud legacy of ethics and focusing on ethical journalism. And we, right in this moment, to meet the moment, are trying very hard to stand up for working journalists. What folks were just saying about self-censorship, about being concerned about speaking out, that's very real. And I feel like they need strong membership organizations that aren't afraid to speak out more than ever, to kind of listen authentically to the issues that really matter and stand up for their rights. And the right to a diverse and inclusive and equitable newsroom and news industry is part of that, and they can't be shut down by fear. So we want as many allies as we can in the fight for press freedom. We're looking for as many partners. We are delighted to work with our press freedom allies to stand up and speak out. So again, I'm delighted to be here and to learn more about all of your work, and look forward to being part of the effort to fight back and fight the fear.
How about that? All right, thank you. Now I see that Phil Martin and Bob Reed have their hands up, so let's go to those two folks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And
congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Tell them what you're retiring from.
Retiring as senior investigative reporter for GBH News and the World. And my thanks to in Boston, that's right. And my thanks to everyone who gave me shout outs. Thank you, Richard. My question is this: when we talk about DEI, are we using a term that many people really don't understand? It's such that they're really talking about perhaps the broader civil rights movement and the losses of civil rights, voting rights, opportunities across 6 decades of struggle and beyond. And so I'm wondering if the research shows that if DEI is actually a surrogate term, a proxy term for many people, when they really mean concerns, fears about losses that are much greater than that which would be under the umbrella DEI.
Okay, who wants to? Well, we can get to somebody could.
One reason I mention this is that you look at the research of Khalil Muhammad, for example, Gabral Muhammad. He says that this is really a larger assault. Eddie Gault says the same thing. And so I'm wondering if this is reflected, however, in what is in the discussions in the newsrooms. Is it reflected in the research of respondents to questions about DEI?
That's a good question. All right, we can pick up on that. Please keep that in the back of your mind. Now we'll go to Bob Reed and then Barbara Reynolds.
Thanks, Richard. My question is actually related because if we think about the history of the efforts to really make our imperfect democracy more democratic and equal, for every measure of distinctive progress is always a backlash. And so the question I have is whether, you can say DEI per se is outlawed as Trump has done in his executive orders, but you can't actively discriminate, or at least legally, you can't actively discriminate against people of color or diverse people, for specifically groups that are identifiable as such as African Americans, Native Americans, etc. And so I wonder if, in fact, whether the anti-DEI is resulting in active discrimination against people of color, which is one part of the equation. And then the other part of the equation is to what degree the general demise of the so-called legacy media, which is, as you know, under assault by the economic forces that make big newspapers and big media financially vulnerable. How much of that process is affecting the hiring / DEI efforts, if that makes sense? In other words, DEI is a nice catchphrase, but if you look at why we have DEI, it's from a legacy of active discrimination, which the civil rights laws were designed to eliminate. And now here we are with a president who actually puts out orders saying it's illegal to practice DEI. Now, I haven't read his orders, so I don't know if in that language it justifies or legalizes active discrimination, or, you know, given the slapshot way in which this administration goes about things, it's just DEI is bad and to hell with any other unintended consequences.
Okay, Bob, I think that everybody will agree that yes, DEI is a proxy for being anti-diversity and anti-people of color. But tell people who you are first, so they can put this in context.
Well, Bob Reed, I'm third president of NABJ way back in 1979, and I was helped co-found the Africa Channel and run a few other cable networks in my life, and I now work mostly out of Africa as a consultant, working with young producers and creatives.
Okay, and to answer your own question, well, of course, everyone knows now that Trump has accused South Africa of discriminating against whites and has given them a priority in the immigration sphere. So I think that answers your question.
Well, yes, we know that Trump and his administration are actively, well, let's just call it what it is, racist.
Yes.
In their policies and ideology. My question, though, is whether the companies who are kowtowing to the anti-DEI initiatives and the executive orders are actively discriminating. That's really the heart of my question. And I don't know the answer to this. And if there's evidence that is the case, then there's perhaps there's a legal route for individuals who can prove that they were discriminated against, in spite of the fact that a lot of the agencies, equal opportunity, the equal, what's that?
EEOC?
EEOC, yes. A lot of those agencies have been dismantled or have, you know, people put in charge who don't care. But I just think that there might be an opportunity to bring cases if the evidence is there, or if we can suss them out.
Okay, I think people can answer that in the chat. My off the cuff thing is there are ways to do that without being quite so culpable, such as what the Washington Post did in getting rid of a lot of the black columnists and putting white conservatives in on the editorial page, which is going on right now. All right, Barbara Reynolds.
Yes, thank you, Richard. For 13 years, I was on the editorial board of USA Today. And when groups would ask to come and talk to the board, you know, I saw often that there was some change. I don't know if how many groups are actually meeting with the editorial boards, and do you think that is still effective? And also, because I'm friends with many people in some of these organizations, especially Washington Post, and they are afraid, you know, after the firing of the young lady who was an opinion columnist. Is there a meeting plan with Washington, with Jeff Bezos?
Well, the NABJ and the other groups did meet with the Washington Post. Uh, Matt Murray, not the editorial side, but Matt Murray, the editor, and maybe Errin, if Errin is still, Errin Haines is still here, she can, and also Phil Lewis, the head of the WABJ, the Washington chapter, are on the call, and maybe they can respond to that.
Yeah. And hi, Dr. Reynolds. So yeah, we in ABJ after Karen's firing, and also um, wanting to be in support and in solidarity with the Black journalists who are still at the Washington Post and frankly working under duress and in a climate of extreme uncertainty that has been a very demoralizing thing to do while they continue to do their jobs with professionalism and excellence. We wanted to meet with the Washington Post leadership. We had a chance to do that this fall. Myself, the Vice President of Print for NABJ, and also Washington Association of Black Journalists President Phil Lewis, had a chance to meet with Matt Murray and spoke to him for nearly an hour, voicing our concerns about the erosion of Black voices from the editorial page and from the newsroom, the departures that have taken place this year and what that has meant in terms of the loss of Black voices in a place that many have seen as a standard bearer for truth and press freedom and democracy, although that opinion has certainly shifted in recent years. And so, the Post acknowledged the challenges that they continue to face. I mean, they've laid people off. This year, I suspect that is going to continue before the end of this year, and that will continue to have an impact on our folks. And so, what we said was that we certainly hoped that they still were committed to a truly representative newsroom, and that they would support the Black journalists who are still in that newsroom. Management had not met with the Black journalists who were working there, who had raised concerns and just wanted to meet with their leadership to talk about what the future looked like and more to the point, what their future was going to look like. And so, we continue to support those folks. We ended up, putting out a statement around the broader impact of the loss of Black voices and why that matters, especially at places like the Washington Post. Also, have been in touch with Karen to let her know, she is a member of NABJ, to let her know that she is supported as well. And so, the current climate, I mean, what this administration is doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion, the first 30 executive orders or so that the president issued were around that very topic. And so the cumulative effect of that is that it has given institutions, including ours, permission not just to not see us, but to devalue and attempt to diminish our contribution to this profession and to the American story. And so we continue to speak out against that and to put these institutions on notice that it is unacceptable to us that they are making choices that erode our voices in newsrooms. And so that is the work that we are doing in a very challenging climate that I don't expect to change.
If I could just add one more thought. I'm so old. I was in the newsrooms even before there was affirmative action. And I was told when I was hired that I was a token and wasn't expected to do very much. And it's just very disheartening to think that we could actually go back to the days of just blatant racism. But I'm so glad there's so many of you fighting that for change. I'm so proud of all of you.
Okay. Right. All right, Jon, you got to. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm glad Barbara said that it's in some ways, I've been in newsrooms more than 50 years, I guess it is. And I feel like I've been having the same conversation for 50 years. I'm sure people like Barbara and Bob Reed and Richard Prince know what I'm talking about. At various times, it has seemed that we've been making more progress, and you'd look up and there'd be a bunch of new people of color in the newsroom. And as soon as you turned around, they're the first people who were getting laid off. We keep having the same conversation over and over again, and we're still not making that kind of progress.
I hear that. Okay, Jon Scheuss has had his hand up for a while.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to follow up on that because I think that it's totally a real situation where we're having a lot of large media companies pull back and stop supporting actively diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've seen that at Gannett, owner of USA Today, rebranded itself as USA Today Corporation back in April, rip off the website, remove references to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is just such a shame. And then in the last couple of months, we've seen CBS News and NBC News cut reporters in different beats that were supposed to cover areas of diversity in newsrooms. And it is definitely causing a chilling effect. Like we've said, like other folks have said on this call about Karen Attia's firing, which we believe is illegal because she's also one of our members at the News Guild. And we're fighting the Post management for her illegal termination. But we have to be real about the fact that the Post is owned by a billionaire, Jeff Bezos, who has deals in front of the president and is trying to cut things from the Post, cut reporters, cut reporting that Trump could be seen as it could upset Trump, right? Because Bezos has deals that he needs to get approved from a financial interest in front of the president. So that is why we have seen, the pulling of Kamala Harris's endorsement. We've seen him just do things that are ticking off. And, Errin, I'm so glad that NABJ went there to Will Lewis, who has been investigated by Scotland Yard. Also, we should point out, for his ties to the phone hacking scandal of the royal family. But I mean, this is a guy who is not an upstanding citizen and has done things to just push readers away by dropping the endorsement of Kamala Harris, by cutting the local coverage of Washington, D.C., which doesn't really even have a hometown paper, which is a majority person of color city. This is ridiculous to cut the local news at the Washington Post. And so I think subscribers are abandoning these publications, similar to the boycott and Target, but that's really sad for the journalists who remain, who want to do good work. And so we have to kind of collectively fight. But I'm really happy, Errin, y'all went in there and held them to account, because that's what we have to do. And we have to do that not just from NABJ, but SPJ needs to be there, IRE needs to be there, every single organization needs to be there, because when we talk about the fear that these publishers or bosses or even we experience, the way to fight fear is collective action. So really proud of y'all doing that.
Thank you so much. Strength in numbers, Jon.
Yeah. One of the things we want to get to is the second part of that question on the table is, and what can we do about this? One of the, and Errin knows this very well, that at the last board meeting, for example, of NABJ, Roland Martin talked about the need for journalists to start thinking of themselves as me, Inc. In other words, not as employees anymore, but as people who control their own destiny. And one of the ways people do that is for ownership, which we talked about, which David Honig can talk about it more. But also as freelance journalists. And we have Larry Goldbetter here, from president of the National Writers Union. Larry, I wonder if you can talk about that. Is that something that you think is sustainable for most journalists to be freelancers and control their own destiny that way? Larry, are you there?
I think he left a while ago.
Oh, no. Okay. All right. Well, does anyone else want to address that question? Is freelancing really a good option for journalists, rather than being someone's employee? Linda, you've got your hand up. Linda Shockley.
Yeah. Well, I think the question is freelancing to whom and what. When you talk about the media that's independent, that's a possibility, but some of the other news organizations that we've been talking about, we've seen what's happened to people. The legacy organizations in particular are not necessarily interested in supporting freelance journalists that they don't have direct control over. So I don't know how viable that is unless you talk about collective action and independent journalists that coalesce, like in an INN or Lion or other organizations. NNPA continues to work on how to work together to get publications that have legs and that are circulated widely to people, because small individual silos that have limited followings may not have the impact that we're looking for them to have.
Okay, Neil Foot has got his hand up too.
Yeah,
First of all, tell us who you are, and then go right into what you were going to say.
hello, everybody. Good to see so many friends. Neil Foot, old school journalist, new school storyteller, chair of the journalism board, a 501c3 independent news organization. There's a donate button at journal-isms.com. So I'll just be transparent. Richard Prince is doing this on his own with the support of a small board. Yeah, it's lasted this long because of the support of folks like you around this table who come every month, both in person and now virtual. But to that point, is a journalism's other independent organizations, nonprofit or otherwise, even the platform by which Roland has started, and listen, from his days when he was a student member on the NABJ board, when I was a member of the Region 3, he and I have been talking about Me Inc. then, from when I hired him back as my editor at blackamericaweb.com for Tom Joyner, to his launching his network shortly thereafter in the late 70s. That was always the goal for Roland. So there was an intention to it. So yeah, I think freelance journalism is a means, but I think Linda hit across several key things of how do we support those existing organizations, and certainly whether it's the Hazel Edneys or the NNPA members, in supporting them in that ways. And then yes, we have the tools right now because of the mobile devices in your hands, and certainly for those educators around the table, Dr. Bland and others. We work with students every day where they have the most powerful publishing device that reaches a global network in the click of a button on their cell phones. And whether some are doing it from an influential standpoint, but others are doing it from a content standpoint. So my point is independence, and certainly, there's probably an opportunity, and I don't want to put Tracy on the spot, but Richard, we may want to do a real good conversation with Tracy and other funders, right, Tracy, on how you build a strategy and a plan to attract dollars and investments to fund these businesses at this very crucial time, which says that there are folks, HBCUs are benefiting from some billionaire who's deciding to give tens of millions of folks. So we know there are potentially others out there who may not want the publicity, but really support the cause. But we need the platform, we need the structure, we need the organization to do that. And yes, independence can happen. But again, if you talk to Roland Martin, he's working 24/7 to build this network, right? He created the infrastructure, he's raised the money, he's built the sponsorships. If you heard any part of his show today, he had Senator Booker on there, basically taking Senator Booker and other politicians, particularly Black politicians, for not even spending money with Black publications and Black media. So that in itself is a huge, massive issue that is another topic for another day. But my point is, I think entrepreneurship, independent journalism, whether it's the nonprofit route or the for-profit route, the hyper-local route, we know people are seeking content that reflects them. We know that people are seeking content that is trustworthy, and some of us around the table or those that we know can produce that kind of content. And the bar to entry from when I may have, or some of us entered the industry 45, 50 years ago is a lot lower than it is now. So I say that as a call to action as much as an opportunity for us to kind of really bring conversations like this and bring the funders, the operators, and the owners together. I was chair of the National Association of Minority Media Executives, NAMI, for many years, that brought senior level diverse executives together from all sorts of media, and we were trying to get diversity in the decision making and things that dissolved because why? Again, there was a decline in the late 2008, 2009 of investment in diversity, funding and troubled business models of media companies that then led to disruptive change. So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for you all for supporting this and looking forward to hearing more about this conversation at a time where I think Marc Morial talked about leaning in. Certainly for those of us at state universities, it's very hard. For me, even being on this call, I might be tracked and called into my office at a state university here in Texas for supporting such causes. But we need to lean in. We need to support these causes. We need each other to kind of amplify the importance of this. And those who are clearly here today are here because they believe in it. It's not going away. Some of us have seen this wave before. And we've stuck to our guns to believe that this is important. Thanks, and continue the conversation, Richard. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Delano is here. Delano Massey, Lynn Adrian, and then Phil Lewis. You're on. Go ahead, Delano. Tell us who you are and then make your point.
Delano Massey, I'm the managing editor of Axios. I helped to build Axios Local. I think about this a number of ways. I am, somebody that has come in here and is a student of this game, and I've tried to learn how to build the thing. And I think a lot about this conversation, and I hear everything that everyone is saying, and I do think about the importance of infrastructure. And there isn't an infrastructure currently that really supports freelance environment where you could make that kind of a living off of it that would supplement the work that you could do in your regular newsrooms, or at least accustomed to the way that we're doing it. But I do think that what I see with Axios and with Substack is that people are building ecosystems because much like our streaming habits, it is evolving and it's shifting and it's changing. And you do not need a conglomerate to actually be a purveyor of news, much like you don't have to be a part of a record company in order for you to be an independent artist. There are different ways that we can do this, but I do think the consistent theme that everybody has mentioned, it isn't the front-facing publishing platform, but it is actually being able to create a consortium of people that can work together so that you have the leverage to advertise, to get sponsorship, and just being, somebody that's watched this thing get built for Axios over the past 3.5 years, there is actually a pathway to this. And there is a pathway to actually sustaining and having a model that works. But, there is a tremendous cost to media, and we also have to think about that. I think that the model is a hybrid, and it's a nonprofit, but also with a for-profit model. And I think that we need to have more conversations about this with intention, because I do think that what is old is new again, and that goes back to the origins of the Black press, almost 200 years. So we're having the same conversation over and over and over and over and over again. And at a certain point, we do have to figure out how we can build the scaffolding so that we can actually build the thing.
Okay, thank you. Lynn Adrian.
I absolutely want to follow up and support what was just said, and also what Tracy said earlier. You put a question whether we can do freelance and that kind of approach to reporting versus going into traditional newsrooms. And I don't know if we have a choice because the business model's broken. And we see that all the time. There are just fewer of those jobs. The jobs that we aspired to for people in my age group when we first came out of J school, those jobs have disappeared and they keep disappearing. They keep laying people off. They are leveraging them to do different things with their corporate parents. So it would be nice to think that that's an option, but it may not be. So in terms of building the infrastructure and the platform to monetize other ways of reaching people, and it will be different. It will not reach the same amount of people at the same time. I think that Joe Dreyfus said that during the NABJ convention about the challenge of trying to scale up in terms of how you reach people. It's not going to be the same as broadcasting cable as we know it. But in terms of me being a former journalism professor and with graduate students, and I got to a point right before I get retired, I'm like, am I doing the right thing to try to guide these students towards what we traditionally would do in terms of local television news operations or things like that, when I knew that that model is collapsing? We have to be teaching the younger people coming into the profession, or even to grab the people who have burned out of the profession, other ways to do it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Phil Lewis, tell us who you are and make your
Yes.
observation.
Hey, everybody. Phil Lewis, president of the Washington Association of Black Journalists, deputy editor at Huffington Post. I talk to a lot of freelancers, just about kind of just what's happening in the industry right now. And the only thing I can really think of is that there needs to just be a reckoning, just period. Because when I talk to these freelancers, they'll tell me like it's hard, but not for the reason you think. It's hard because you know how terribly Black journalists are treated in the newsroom. Double that for freelancers. It's actually worse, because there are editors, um, you know, largely white, largely upper high class, right? Or Ivy League, whatever. And they don't necessarily understand some of these stories that they're pitching. They're not culturally, they don't understand, why we are pitching certain stories that we are pitching and things like that. So when I think about freelancing, because Black journalists in particular, we tend to over-index as freelancers, and now we're being pushed out of these newsrooms. The only thing I can think of is, okay, there needs to be some sort of just complete reckoning. Like freelancing doesn't seem to be the answer to me. It's a salve, right? Like it's something that we're doing to um, sort of smooth over kind of the larger issues that we're having kind of in this industry right now. So I don't know. I don't really know obviously what the answer is. I think I agree with a lot of what Delano said. But when I think about freelancing, it's to me it's not necessarily the only answer to what ails us. I guess I would say.
Well, tell us about what you're doing. I mean, you're balancing freelancing and with the your online outlet and working at HuffPost and
Well, yeah, I'm doing that partially because I do enjoy it. Like I enjoy having I guess a slice of the internet and a slice of an audience that is interested in the stories that I care about. I don't necessarily care about every story that comes through my my main job. So it's nice to have kind of another place to put stories that I find interesting. But I'm also doing that because I've been told ever since I got into this industry, you need to be developing some sort of other platform because you will be laid off at some point. Like that's what I'm told. Like you need to be developing some sort of separate audience so that you can take it with you when you are laid off because it will happen. That's what I was told when I got into this
they were
industry 10
right.
years ago. So that's what my reality has been the entire time. So those are things that I'm thinking about.
I hear that. Okay. All right, Joe
When were
Gray.
you told that?
I
How
was
long
told
ago was that?
I was told that in 2015 as an intern.
Okay.
All right, Joe Gray, welcome, new executive editor of the Amsterdam News in New York. Good to have you back. Tell us what's on your mind.
Well, I really, like to piggyback on what Phil and everybody else has been saying about freelancing. A significant number of the people who write for us are freelancers, and that's actually been true for quite some time. And as we try to have a larger digital platform, that's going to be continue to be true. But I'm also of the understanding that freelancing, a newspaper can't live completely by freelance writers, and freelancers can't live solely by one news organization. A lot of our freelancers do other things. And so you have to, create space for them to be able to do what they do, because they have to make a living as well. A lot of them might have teaching jobs or do other things. So I think there's room to have a freelance ecosystem. Um, but can we depend on just making all our staff freelancers? No, that I have to agree is not the answer in the grand scheme of things. And that's just having been a freelancer myself. Um, I think there are other solutions that need to be found when it comes to having content come in there. Maybe there can be like sort of I don't know, a large network of freelancers that sort of circulate the ecosystem and contribute to all of us to help shore us up. Would that I could hire more of these people on my staff. I would, a lot of them are really, really great, and I wish I could bring them all in, but budgets don't permit that. Um, but I think it's something that we have to really seriously look at as we navigate these challenging times. Is how can we gain more funds so we can bring more freelancers onto the staff, so we in turn have better content and more content, create more revenue for ourselves. So it's sort of like a cycle right there. So my thing is understand and commit yourself to how important freelancers are, um, and understand where they're coming from with a lot of what they do.
Okay. Uh, I see another hand from Tracy. Tracy Powell is back.
Thank you, Richard. So I want to address the freelance piece, but I also want to answer your question. And I want to answer your question first. I think what we can do collectively is, educate our community. Let's take the Black community first. There's a lot of money in the Black community. We spend a lot of money. We need to educate them about what is Black owned and what isn't. I think sometimes we think stuff is Black owned and it's not. And so when I heard Neil talk earlier, I was on the launch team for Black America Web. I'm very proud to say that. And it was one of the first like Black owned platforms out there in the internet age, the digital age. And so if Tom Joyner is well off. He was well off enough to fund his own news outlet. And so I think there are other Black people out there. There's the Donors of Color Network that's based right here in Atlanta. We need to talk to the Donors of Color Network and talk to them about why civic news and information is just so critical to the work that they're already doing. You have to put information in people's hands in order for them to act. And so that's what Black media does. It's, someone mentioned Roland Martin earlier. He puts information in Black hands every day in hopes of that they use that information to make, the best decisions for their own lives. So I think educating those donors of color, I think, I'm a member of the Association of Black Foundation Executives, educating those folks, the foundation executives about why civic news and information is so critically important. That's where we should start. There are folks out there that not only have access to dollars, but they have the green light on how to spend those dollars. But it is an uphill battle educating people about journalism. I don't even use the term journalism anymore when I talk to people. Journalism gets a bad rap. People hear journalism and they hear disconnection. or they hear a for-profit. Why should I give to a for-profit entity or effort? And so I think there's a, people have a very different perception about news and information than we do as journalists. And so we have to start at a whole different starting point when we talk to those with the funding support, who could actually help us, I think.
Angela Dotson, but first, I'm not familiar with the Donors of Color Network. Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, is
Who are these folks?
I think it's actually Black led, to be honest with you. I'm trying to remember who the president is, but yeah, there's a donors. So Blacks in Philanthropy, I think that's another organization, but the Black community has a lot of discretionary income. Just right here in Atlanta, this is what the people call us, what the land of milk and honey, because you have so much Black wealth here. That's why, Dothan is based here. And so if we can actually get in front of these people, the Tyler Perrys and the Robert Smiths, you can get in front of those people and explain to them why civic news and information is so important. I mean, those are the members of Dothan. They're, and then I know that one thing that NABJ has started doing that I really admire a lot, and I'm trying to figure out how to do the same thing, is that they go to Martha's Vineyard every year because they know when the Black wealthy folks are up on Martha's Vineyard and they're talking to those folks about NABJ. We need to do the same and talk in terms of talking about civic news and information generally. So a lot of those people on Martha's Vineyard are also members of the Donors of Color Network.
Interesting. Okay, thanks. All right, Angela Dotson.
Hi. I don't know if I introduced myself before, but I'm a former senior editor of the New York Times, and I was executive editor of Black Issues Book Review for a few years. And when I got laid off from Black Issues Book Review, I started getting freelance jobs the first week, including ghostwriting and writing for some magazines. And what I want to say is, and right now I also have a company called Editors on Call LLC, which unites people in these editorial trades and tries to find people. If you call me up and say you're writing your memoir and I can't edit it, then I'm going to try to find you somebody, that kind of thing. But what I was going to say about the magazine world, what I found is one of the reasons why I was able to find work so quickly is we all hire each other. If I have a project and I've worked with you before, then I'm going to go back to you and ask you to do something for me. Or somebody's going to call up and say, I've got this writer who wants somebody to ghostwrite a book. Are you available? And there's this whole network of people, of Black people in the magazine world who hire each other like this, or make sure that, if I'm working, you're working. Basically, I need a cartoonist. Does somebody have an indexer? You just, call your buddy and you got somebody ready to go to work, a qualified person who knows what they're doing. I had a family emergency recently, and I called somebody up and said, I've got a whole set of book proofs here that need to be read by X date. Are you available? And they said yes, and they read them for me. It takes a certain level of trust, but it also takes we've all worked together before. We've all been working together for 20 years. We all know who's the best photographer in town. We all know who's the best proofreader in town, who's the best indexer, who's the best this, that, or the other. And it's a network. I don't think there's the same kind of network in newspapers as there is in magazines, but it's mostly because these people work together for years and years and years. You've worked in offices together, and then we work on each other's projects all the time. I think, that's something that needs to happen across the industry. So that's all I have.
Here. Thank you. All right, E.R. Ship.
Thanks. I also put it in the chat. But Tracy, what term do you use instead of journalists?
Thank you for that question. We call them journalists. At least those who want to be called journalists. Some don't want to be called journalists, and they simply want to be recognized for the work that they do, and they see themselves as information providers. And so, but yeah, so I think that I don't know if you've heard of Push Black before. We invested in Push Black when I was at Borealis, and I just remember Julian Walker, he was the publisher, still is the publisher, told me he didn't want to be called a journalist, and I said, "Well, you were doing exactly what journalists do. In fact, you're doing it better than some journalists that I know." And so, respectfully, he did. I think that journalists, in a lot of ways, have turned off our communities in a lot of different ways because of the harm that we often produce. And so he did not want to be attached to that in any kind of way. He didn't want to be looked at as a journalist, as someone that had brought harm to communities for so long. And so he is a publisher. So he said, call me a publisher, call me an information provider, but I am not a journalist. And so we do respect those who don't want to be labeled as such.
Well, I want to be labeled that.
That's really interesting. Sorry, Tracy. In our world over at IRE, we had a whole bunch of people that didn't want to be called freelancers anymore. They want to be independent journalists. And we actually have a big, I was going to say, we actually have a lot of people that do that. And I recognize the issues that Jon and some of the others have brought up, the legal issues, which I think are very real, where they have a lot of liability and all that. But we have a lot of members that look at that as some that look at it as a living and do very well at it, and then others that have done it as a stopgap, between jobs, and do very well as an in-between thing, as a break or between, because either they left someplace that they didn't like very much or were laid off, and do very well along the lines of what the gentleman was talking about, where they hire mostly freelancers, especially the smaller independent places that rely a lot on freelancers. And that's the very hyper local that Tracy is talking about, where they need those people because they can't afford staffers. And they actually depend on each other. And there's a whole ecosystem of that kind of work that depends on each other. And I think that there is actually a very thriving environment of in the real world where that functions very well. It's something that we need to consider.
I think you're right, that some publications rely on freelancers. I don't know that I put in here earlier from a funding standpoint, whether we see that as a sustainable business
Long
model.
term.
Yeah, long term, we want to see capacity added to these newsrooms. And so capacity means people. Going back to E.R. Ship's question, I mean, I call folks journalists and they want, information providers, but there's also a conversation happening right now in our industry about influencers. And, and that's increasingly a big part of who's producing the information, and they're getting deals with major brands to produce or provide information or distribute information. And there's also a conversation about creators. I know some organizations that we work with, they call themselves creators. Now, I think that can be looked at a lot of different ways as well. I'm not mad at it though. Though I don't, the people we tend to work with don't see themselves as influencers or creators. They see themselves again as information providers. And I think that's right now, that's a critical role. They're the ones that's closest to community. That means they're close to the problems, and they're also closest to the solutions. And so I think we need to recognize that and also understand that the way that information flows in communities these days has been revolutionized. It's completely changed. We are no longer the gatekeepers, and we should not see ourselves as that. Information flows in a lot of different ways, and so we should understand how people access critical news and information, and then meet folks where they are. I know a lot of nonprofit organizations right now are hiring laid off journalists to produce news for that nonprofit agency. And so, again, that's just yet another way that information is now circulating in our communities, and we must understand what's happening on the ground so we can properly respond to it.
See, that's kind of what I think. Like, that's one of the things that in my world, we train, right? That's what we do. And I feel like that genie left the bottle already. What we
Yeah.
really need to do is teach those people how to verify information and how to access public information. I feel
agree.
very strongly that we know how to do it. So why don't we just share what we know? I mean, they're already providing the information, exactly what you're saying. And since they're providing the information, we should be helping them figure out how to do the right thing, because sometimes they just don't know how to do it. And they're passing on bad information because they don't know how to do it properly. So they didn't go to school, they didn't learn how to do it right. So what does it hurt for us to tell them, look, this is what you ought to do. You need to verify information. You need to make sure, where did it come from? What was their angle? Because I've talked to people like that just on my own, and they go, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Oh, well, that's what I should be doing. Or they don't know where to get information. Or like they didn't know that they have a right to get the budget from their school board. That kind of thing. Like, oh, you mean I can ask for that?
That's
Yes,
right.
yes, you can. And that,
that's what the pivot fund is doing. That's
yes,
exactly what the pivot fund
yes.
is doing.
And that's key. I think what you do needs to be scaled. That's what we need to do, scale that information, that training. Sorry, Richard,
No,
got
that's
carried
good.
away.
And I want to underscore that because there's so much misinformation and disinformation out there, and people who don't have journalistic training or know what the journalistic standards are. And we have to, because we've been through all this, assert ourselves and say, wait a minute, this is the way you do it. And this is why we should be believed and trusted and not. I mean, there was just I was talking to somebody else yesterday on Facebook right this now. There's somebody posted something, it may have been written by artificial intelligence, that is flat out wrong, but yet it has, thousands of people are signing on to it, saying, "Oh yes, this is true, and this is what I think about it," and nobody's there to tell them, "Wait a minute,
Yeah, hold
this is
on.
not
That's
written
not
by a
right.
journalist. You don't have to believe it."
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Anyway, we only have 3 minutes left. Is there anybody who hasn't said anything who wishes to speak up now or forever or hold their peace? We haven't heard from a lot of people. Well, I want to congratulate our new president in New York, who was just elected, and she's on the call for the first time. So I can't find you on the on. I thought you think you're still here. Oh, oh my goodness. Well, anyway, I want to welcome, to thank those who were here for the first time, and also the veterans, and I think we've got a lot of good ideas floated here, and I think that the next thing to do is to act. And I'm glad that Marc Morial was able to provide a good focus for us on January 22nd, and I guess we'll see representatives of some of the people here there. What we'll do next is there are a lot of good ideas in the chat room. I haven't seen them all, but what we usually do and what we will do again is print out those comments and circulate them to everybody who has an email address with us, so that we can, move on and act on some of those things. We'll be having
Lost her.
another.
Unless your audio. Okay.
Oh, can you hear me?
Now
Yes.
we can.
Now
Okay.
we can.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, we do plan to have a December roundtable as well. And we're going to talk about Reverend Jesse Jackson and people who have covered him over the years. So if you know people who should be in that conversation, please let us know. And other than that, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Richard?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Richard, it's
Yes.
Linda. Just reminding people, Giving Tuesday is
Oh, that's right.
December
Thank you.
2nd, and journalisms can be on your list for giving.
Yes. Here, here. Thank you, Linda. Let's say that again. Giving Tuesday is next December 2nd, and journalism could be on your list. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we're gonna knock this. We're gonna put this on YouTube for those who missed it or want to see something, a portion of it again, and we'll do that. And as I said before, we'll print out the chat comments so people can because people put links in there that and say things that they couldn't say during the recording. So thanks once again, everybody, and we'll see most of you, I hope, on at our December meeting. Date to be announced soon. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Great to see you.
Okay.
Good night.
All right.